Who's in here? Say hi. Oh, my dog's going to start growling. No, no, no. It's just me. I'm talking to people on the internet, my sweet girl. Hey, I see you in here. If you're. I just turned off my computer. I didn't realize the sound was on. Okay, I'm going to wait till just a few more people get in because I don't want to have to repeat the story too much. I want to talk about my dad's time working in Uganda in Africa. And then I'll talk a little bit about my time in Rwanda, which is the country just south of Uganda, or at least one of the countries just south of Uganda. Go ahead and say hi if you want to, and I'm on my computer so I can actually chat. I've got my phone taking care of the camera, and I'm going to be jiggling my phone around because technically speaking, I'm not very good at that. While we're waiting, hey, I'm going to put a plug in here. This is not a paid promotion, okay? I just want to show you guys something. This is a CBD salve from Treadwell Farms out of Florida. And it really helps with our pain. I've got a place where I had a broken wrist a few years back, and I put the salve on my wrist when it starts to ache every now and then. Hello, is it Fede? Or hello. So I use the Treadwell Farms CBD hemp salve, and it's got what does it have? It has peppermint, I think. It has olive oil, shea butter, some kind of a wax, yarrow flowers, calendula flowers, hemp extract, something called tulsi, rosemary, and peppermint. And it comes in this little jar. And as far as cost goes, it's the cheapest CBD I've ever bought. Right there. We use it a lot, so there's not a whole lot left. And they run specials. Buy one, get one. There's a discount. It's cool. So it's Treadwell Farms. I'll go ahead and type that in the chat just so you guys can find it. So I just wanted to talk about my dad and his time in Uganda. This would have been the mid 1990s. If you saw my other live where it says hanging out with the dogs and it shows a picture of my dog, Jaja, on the thumbnail, you know that my dad was in agriculture. He worked in the United States and he also worked in Mexico. And at some point, he was on the radar of the Dole Corporation. And I don't know if they wanted him to move to Hawaii or if they wanted him to move to California's Central Valley. But Dole was kind of courting him for a bit. But my dad needed my mom's permission to move, and she wouldn't give it. Oh, you can see plenty of me, Bede or I'm showing my fireplace today and my new love ornaments up there on top of the mantle. I just got those at the auction last night. Pretty cool. Anyway, at some point after Dole started courting my dad, trying to get him to go to work for them, someone at the US government got a hold of him through USAID. And I know that's a bad word now, but in the 1990s, it wasn't a bad organization. They were doing a lot of good work for a lot of people, and they probably still were recently, but they were also doing a lot of bad things with the money. But he went to Washington, D.C., and had meetings at the USAID office, and they asked him to work a project in Uganda. So I was married with children. I lived in a different town, not too far from my parents, but I didn't really see my dad much during the whole planning of this trip. But I remember him telling me he was going to Uganda I had to look it up on a map. I had no idea where it was on the African continent. So he, told me about his project, and he told me why USAID wanted to spend the money on the project. And what was going on in Uganda, at least in this village at the time, was the European flower buyers came to that village. Hello to the new people in here. I'm just telling a story about my dad's work in Uganda. So the flower buyers from Europe came down to African villages, and they told the people in these villages that if they would grow flowers for the European market, this is before the European Union, but it was the European market, that they could get a certain amount of money. And they told them, I don't know if it was by the flower, by the pound, by the bushel, by the ton. I don't know what they told them, but basically what they told them was turn your farmland over to agriculture, to growing flowers instead of growing vegetables or fruit, because we will give you so much more money because this is how much these flowers go for. And so maybe they showed them, and this is totally made up, but I'm assuming they showed them, if you grow carnations, we will give you 25 cents US per flower or something like that. I'm just saying that's what they told them. They told them they would give them a certain amount of money per unit. So all of the farmers grew what they told them to grow. They were told to grow a specific flower for the European flower market. I know this is boring for some of you. A lot of you have left. There's only 2 people left. I'm sad. Oh, there's 5 now. Cool. Tell me where you're from. That would be awesome. I'd love to know. I'm telling a story about Uganda and my dad when he worked there. So the village he went to had a starvation problem because they grew the flowers for the European flower buyers, but when they took them to market, they all took them to market at the same time. And because it caused the price of the flowers to drop because of supply and demand. When they gave them the price they were willing to pay for the flowers, that was with a low supply and a high demand. So flowers were worth a lot. But when all of the villages brought the flowers to market at the same time, the buyers were able to be picky about exactly which flowers they bought, but also the price was extremely low because now we had a huge supply and they didn't have as big of a demand. So my dad was asked to go in and teach them how to grow something they could sell to the European market, that if the bottom fell out of it as far as price goes, they could at least eat it. So they didn't want to grow cassava, which is what everybody there eats, because cassava is very dangerous. I believe it has arsenic. I'm not positive what the poison is, but women and girls typically work their cassava and they die sometimes from inhaling the fumes while they're processing it. So they wanted something that was safe to grow, something that would sell to the Europeans that could travel well, and something that held a high price. And my dad had been growing sugar snap peas in Central California, or at least working with growers and teaching them how to grow sugar snap peas. They travel well, they have a very high value. There's a lot of demand for them, and the demand was growing around the world at the time. So he flew over to Uganda. He had an assistant with him. I can't remember his assistant's name, but it is important to tell you that both my dad and the assistant are Caucasian. So these 2 white men showed up in this village in Uganda, and they started working with the growers. I'm going to show you a map right now. And I didn't bring up Uganda because I'm not sure where my dad was in Uganda, except I know he was in the southern part. So he was in a village somewhere around here. I don't remember exactly where, but he was in this little pointed area here. All this colored area is Rwanda, Africa. So Rwanda in the mid 1990s was a powder keg of violence. And so was Uganda, actually, especially down in the region where my dad was. He didn't see it because he wasn't working with he wasn't working with any freedom fighters or anything like that. He was working with farmers. You got a question. What's your question? I'll get back to my chat. Oh gosh, where's my chat? Here we go. Okay, go ahead and ask your question. Fede Owar. Anyway, I'll keep talking while you ask your question. That's fine. So my dad was in the village and he was able to come home sometimes. No, I have not been to Uganda. I've been to Rwanda, and I'll show you later on the map where I've been in Rwanda, but I've not been to Uganda. We didn't end up going there. We were in the very northern part of Rwanda for most of our time there, but we were just across from Congo, so we weren't actually close to Uganda. Anyway, so dad started working with the farmers and he would come home for little breaks and I would go visit him. He had all kinds of pictures of the children and the women he was working with. He really didn't work with the men much. And this bothered my dad because my dad was a very ethical person as far as work goes. He had a very strong work ethic. And the men in his village would start drinking something called banana beer first thing in the morning. And they would sit around either at the bar or at somebody's house on their porch and just drink beer all day. And the women are the ones that worked the fields. They're the ones that he had to educate about the agriculture as far as growing the sugar snap peas because they were the ones that worked. And he said some of the worst cases he saw of abuse was actually Fide. I have a friend from Uganda, and I have several friends who have been there as well. My friend grew up in Uganda, even though he's a Rwandan. I believe he is a Tutsi from Rwanda because they all got pushed out in the late 1950s, and his family was one of the families that was pushed out of Rwanda and into Uganda. So yes, I have definitely seen pictures of his home country, and it is beautiful. So anyway, my dad was a little disgusted with the men in the village because they didn't work, they didn't help their wives. And one of the worst cases was a pregnant woman with a baby strapped to her and a toddler going out in the field with her. She had to have the two children with her all day, plus she was pregnant, and her husband was drinking beer all day. And he never did help her with the agriculture. So she had to do all of the housework, all of the cooking, all of the shopping, and all of the farm work. And that really frustrated my dad. Now, my dad didn't see any, he may not have noticed, but he didn't see anybody coming through the village that looked like they were going to go into Rwanda and cause trouble. He just saw the farmers, the farm families, the women working the fields with the children, and the men getting drunk all day at the bar or at their homes or wherever. So he came home on one break, and his partner stayed there. They were staying in a hotel in the town. And my dad got word that while he was gone, the entire village was slaughtered. Not his partner. There were people there from France, from the UK, from the United States, and from other countries, I would assume. They went through and they knocked on the hotel doors, and if a black person answered the door, they killed them. And these were, I'm guessing, but I think they were Hutus from Rwanda that came up. My dad told me they were people who came up from Rwanda in retaliation for violence from Uganda coming down into Rwanda, and it was the Tutsis who were in Uganda coming down into Rwanda, causing mayhem, and then going back up into Uganda. They weren't in the village my dad was in. My dad was in a farming village. There were no soldiers. There were no massacre people wandering around. There were men getting drunk all day and women working in the fields all day with their children. So, needless to say, my dad did not go back to Uganda after that. He had his entire refrigerator and freezer covered in pictures of the village children and the moms. And he said he couldn't even stand to look at them anymore. And he actually threw them all away because every single one of them was dead, even down to the littlest baby was dead. They had all been massacred. They went house to house, field to field, If there was a school, they went to the school. If there was a hospital, they went to the hospital. They went to the hotel. They went to the stores. They went to the entire village, and they killed every single black person in the village. The white people lived. They didn't have a beef with the white people. They were only upset with the massacres that have been going on across the border. So now I'm scrolling on the map and I'll show you where I have been and how things have changed. So I have been to Rwanda. So we flew into Kigali and then we went over to Gisenyi and oh gosh, I'm not used to this screen. How funny was my phone? We drove down to Kibuye and did some work down there on a church. We did a water catchment system. In Gisenyi, in Gisenyi, we worked on a latrine, a water catchment system, and we helped distribute things at the church, and at an orphanage we helped with water catchment. I don't remember if we worked on a latrine, but we also did some work in some fields. I think they were growing cassava at that orphanage. So I've been to Rwanda. I have not been up to Uganda. And over here we see on this map Zaire, and that's because back in the 1990s when this map was made, Zaire was the bordering country to the west, but now it is Democratic Republic of Congo. And we made a friend while we were in Chisinyi. She actually fed us a feast, which was wonderful. She actually went over across the border quite regularly to visit family. And unfortunately, she was murdered. And that was awful. Not while we were there, but we got word several months after we left that she had been murdered for money. Someone killed her for money, but she didn't have any money on her. But she's obvious she was wealthy because she did have the clothing and the reputation of a very wealthy woman. She was a sweet, sweet lady. So I've been to Rwanda, not been to Uganda. I know Uganda is a beautiful country because the sister country in Rwanda is so beautiful. But that is my dad's story of working in Uganda. It was really horrible to see him. He was absolutely heartbroken. He loved those women and children. They were his heart when he was there, and he thought about them when he was home, and he gave them trinkets, and the children just loved him so much. And I think the women appreciated him because he was a good role model as far as a working man goes. But that's my story. It's a short one. It's only been about 18 minutes, but I'm going to cut this live off unless somebody has a question. There's only 4 people in here now, so I imagine nobody's going to have any questions. Fede Owar, are you in Uganda right now? Oh, I guess you've gone. Okay. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for your question, and thank you for telling me to go to Uganda. I do think my international travel is over at this point. I'm old enough now that I've seen a lot of the world, and I think I've probably seen all that I'm going to see. But I do appreciate you encouraging me to go there because I know it's a beautiful, beautiful country, and I would have people I could visit there because our friend who lives here still has family there. I know I would be welcomed. That would be amazing. But we won't be doing that. So I'm just going to do one more plug for this. This is the Treadwell Farms CBD salve. It's called hemp salve. It's got CBD in it. And it is awesome stuff. Really is. Got that peppermint that makes it cool. And we put it on our aches and pains and it actually works. It takes a little bit to work. It's not as quick as Tylenol, but it works longer than Tylenol. So that's the plus. Oh my goodness, my camera's been crooked the whole time. I'm sorry, guys. All right, thanks to those of you who just came in here. If you want to give me a thumbs up, that's great. If not, that's okay too. If you have any comments, if you're on the watch crew afterwards and you have any questions or comments, please don't be afraid to put them down there in the comments section, and I'll try to answer them if I can. That was just my story about my dad's work in Uganda, Africa. Have a great day, you guys. Be blessed. Thank you so much for visiting. Give me a follow, a subscription if you Subscribe if you want. That's what I meant to say. Give me a thumbs up if you want. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Thank you so much.